welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Mr. Charles once again, and as you can see on the screen, today we will be debunking, unpacking, deconstructing Life of Pi. And it's only one word. There's a word in particular that we need to unpack, and that is adaptability. Okay? Adaptability. What does it mean to adapt, or to be adaptable, or the practice of adaptability? So for 3 marks, let's say the question says, account how Pi was able to adapt, or explain the practice of adaptability in the context of Life of Pi. How would you respond to that? And learners, I think it's important here to go back to Pi's childhood. You know, so what we can do, we can draw on from the lessons from his childhood and how it influences him late in his life. Okay, so for example, so when Pi was at school, they mocked him, as you know, because of the phonetic sound of his name. So instead of calling him Pacine, they called him Pissing. So they mocked and they bullied him. Okay, so Pi described this feeling as walking with a crown of thorns on his head, obviously making an allusion or reference to the crucifixion, right? So Jesus Christ being mocked. So now, if you think about that, you know, Pi was able to adapt, and this will give us a glimpse into his resilient personality, or the state of being defiant. So for example, given that Pi was mocked at school, he did not allow it to affect him that much. Instead, he found a coping mechanism to adapt, to counter the bullying. So instead of crying or being, you know, pessimistic, what he did instead, before any class, he would introduce himself to the class, and he would write his name on the board, and he would underline the first 2 letters of his name, P-I, Pi. And he will say, my name is Pacine Molitor Patel, but you can call me Pi, underlining the P and the I. He would then further continue by linking this to a mathematical equation, explaining that through this mathematical equation, you are able to study the universe. So he did this, you know, consecutively. And obviously his peers were very amazed. They were like dumbfounded as well. The teacher as well, like, next time ask permission before you introduce yourself. So what Pi is doing there, and this is only an example, you know, Pi, because of his resourcefulness, he was able to adapt. He was able to find a mechanism, a coping mechanism, a defense mechanism to deal with what he has been experiencing. So that lesson, you know, the lesson to be creative and to adapt, absolutely played a fundamental role on the lifeboat for 227 days at sea. Okay, so for example, you can say by losing his family, he was able to adapt by finding comfort in the animals. Okay, losing his mother in particular, he found comfort in orange juice. Okay, his ability to adapt, because he was a very analytical thinker. When he discovered the supplies on the lifeboat, he was able to calculate how long it will keep him. He was able to calculate how long the water will keep him as well. Okay, because of his analytical brain, his ability to adapt. Also, he built a raft to maintain flight distance between himself and Richard Parker. His ability to adapt because of the lesson. Because listen to this. Remember, his father taught him a lesson. that animals are dangerous. Do not anthropomorphize animals, right? Remember that lesson where Santos took Pi and Ravi to witness how the tiger, Maisha, devoured a goat. Okay, not Mr. Charles, a different goat. And that lesson is absolutely important because the lesson allowed Pi to be alert about the dangers of wild animals. Okay, his ability to adapt. When he ran out of water, he understood the power of the sun and the solar storms. Ability to adapt. He understood how to maintain flight distance. He understood that in order for him to survive, he will have to, somehow take on the role of the alpha and RP as the omega. He completely understood that. He understood that he had to make Richard Parker rely on him for food and not the other way around. He understood that. His ability to adapt, influenced by childhood, influenced by his father. Okay? So, I think the idea of adaptability is clearly linked to resilience. If you're able to adapt, you become resilient. And in your resilience, you are defiant. Let me re-explain. In your ability to adapt, you become resilient. And in your resilience, you are now defiant. Okay. In other words, whatever trauma you subsequently experience, you will have a coping mechanism to deal with that because of your adaptability. So when you look at Pi and you're looking for an adjective or a word to describe him, adaptability, resilient, defiant. Okay? And what you're going to do, you're going to provide examples that you will link to these ideas. Okay? So do not only write Pi is adaptable. Give an example. Where? How? Why? Who? Also, your point of call will be his childhood. Okay? That's point of call. Always childhood influence late in life ability to adapt. Okay. So, that's it. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And yeah, cheers.